When it comes to childbirth, timing is everything. From the time of conception to the time that you have to spend at your appointments, to the time of figuring out when to leave for the hospital, to the time you want to actually be in labor and push. But when it comes to actually leaving your house to go to the hospital, what are the cues? What are the signs? What are the things that we need to know to help you make an informed decision to know when it's best to leave for the hospital and be able to labor at home as long as possible? In this video, I'm going to dive into 5 ways to know that it's time to go. Hey mama, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chanel. I am a mama of 3, wife, doula, and really just here to help you become more confident, empowered, and excited to walk into birth knowing that you're going to write your own story and allow that to transfer over into motherhood. So I am here to give you all the tips, the tricks, the tools, and the empowerment to navigate every step of this journey. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure to hit the subscribe button below and make sure that you hit that notification bell so that you know when all these videos are coming out, because I want to be with you on every step of this journey. So one of the biggest questions and arguments that happen on social media, on some of my posts, and in some of the conversations that I have with moms is, when should I leave my house? If I'm going to have a hospital birth or I'm going to be birthing outside of my home, when should I go? And one of the things that is important to understand when it comes to birth is that the first intervention in birth is leaving your home. Even if you're having an unmedicated birth, the first intervention is leaving your home, because that's when things shift physiologically. You are in this comfortable, peaceful space, and then you're going to a space that is unfamiliar, and that can cause a shift in the hormones, a shift in the labor process. And so it's important to really understand how to time this up as ideal as possible so that you can have the birth that you desire and spend as little time at the hospital as possible. If you desire a home birth, this is a great video for you, but maybe you're not having one. If you desire to have a birth where you're just showing up to the hospital to push, like many of my clients have. I had a mama who literally showed up and had her baby 7 minutes later. Another mama who showed up had her baby 45 minutes later. And this is not necessarily everybody's desire. But if it is yours, this is going to be helpful for you. And we're going to talk about all the other things too. What if I live far away? All the things. We're going to talk about all of that in this video, because it's important that you have the signs, the cues to listen to your body and your baby to know when it's really time to go. And I'm sorry to tell you that what you're probably being told as, when your contractions are 5 minutes apart, then you need to start heading in. That is not true. So let's dive in. Sign number 1 that you're going to be looking at to know that it's time to go is the timing of your contractions. Now, I know that seems very ironic because I just told you if your contractions are 5 minutes apart, then it's not time to go. Timing matters when it comes to figuring out when it's time to go, but it doesn't determine when it's time to go. It is a factor to consider. And one of the things that I hear a lot of, and what I see in these apps and in the conversations with our providers, is when your contractions are about 5 minutes apart, start heading in. That is not active labor. Active labor is when you have a contraction pattern that is at a 4-1-1 pattern. That means that your contractions are happening every 4 minutes. They're lasting for 1 minute or longer. And this has been happening for 1 hour. And what I see too often is women who are having contractions that are 5 minutes apart, or the first 2 contractions that are 4 minutes apart, they start getting their bags together and rushing to the hospital because they think that because they're in active labor that they're about to have a baby really fast. And unfortunately, for a lot of us, that's not the case. Some women, yes, they do labor a little bit faster than others, but for the majority of first-time moms, you're going to be in active labor for a little bit of time. Maybe not as long as early labor, but you're still going to be laboring for a little bit of time. And so there's no need to rush just because your contractions have hit a 4-1-1 or a 5-1-1 pattern. What we want to pay attention to when it comes to timing is, am I seeing a decreased period of time in between my contractions? And are my contractions getting longer? If your contractions are 4 minutes apart, but they're only 30 seconds long, you're not in active labor for the most part. Yes, there are outliers. Yes, there are extreme situations where some women's bodies just never get into a pattern. And I've witnessed and seen those too, which is why I tell you that timing is not the only factor that we're looking at, but it is one of them. So if your contractions are not 1 minute for an extended period of time, then you're probably not in active labor and it's not time to go yet. What I like to tell my clients is that if we start to see that your contractions are getting closer together and they're getting longer and they're getting more intense, then we're going to pay attention to that timing. Because I like to push my clients to try to stay at home till about 3-1-1, where they're about 3 minutes apart, lasting for 1 minute to 90 seconds or so, and this has been happening for 1 hour. And usually when it comes to timing, we're also taking into account your commute and all of those other things, which we'll talk about in this video. But if you can try to aim for 3-1-1, because it does take a while for a lot of us to get from 5-1-1 or 4-1-1 to 3-1-1. And just because you hit 3-1-1 doesn't mean you're about to have a baby in 5 minutes. For some of us, some of these other factors will help us determine that we need to leave sooner. But for a lot of us, that 3-1-1 pattern is a good time to go because we're probably entering or moving quickly towards transition. So once we get to that transitional phase of labor, that's a good time for us to try to go to the hospital, because what can happen is if you go too early and you're in the good swing of things, things can slow down or even stop when you get to the hospital because your body has to readjust. So think through timing. And if you're going to be using a contraction timer, make sure that you use it properly. And I will show you how to do that. But one thing to also note here is that your contractions should be in a pattern, ideally. If they're all over the place, they're 7 minutes apart, then 4 minutes apart, then 5 minutes apart, then 3 minutes apart, then 10 minutes apart, that's a sign that your baby could be in a funky position. And what we need to do in that case is we need to work on getting our babies in an optimal position. Some things that you can do could be the Miles circuit. You could be doing inversions, spinning babies. There's a lot of things that you can do that I work with my clients on specifically to help get your baby in an optimal position if you're seeing a very inconsistent pattern. If you want to learn more about this, you can go in my description below and I will share more information about my programming, my coaching, and my classes so that you can get more information in a very tailored way and a very structured way so you have a plan for everything. Sign number 2 that it might be time to go is that you're feeling increased amounts of pressure. Now, just feeling pressure is not a sign to leave and go to the hospital. We're going to feel pressure. It's natural to feel pressure. We're having a baby. Of course, we're going to feel more pressure as our babies descend into the pelvis. But what does your pressure feel like? Where is your pressure? Is it in your butt? Is it in the front? Is it in your vagina? Like, where is your pressure? Eventually, it might feel like, oh my gosh, I have a bowling ball right between my legs and I feel this immense amount of pressure. That's a good thing. What I want you to think about as you progress throughout labor is, what is the intensity level? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much pressure are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? And the closer we get to 10, realistically, that is going to be a sign that it might be time to go. If we're getting close to that 7, 8, 9 level pressure and you're still at home and we have some good timing to support that pressure, that's probably a good time to leave. If you're feeling rectal pressure, that's also a good time to leave, because if you're feeling the need or urge to poop and you've already pooped and you can't get anything out, that's probably your baby's head. And when you start to feel rectal pressure, that's a sign that your baby is pretty close to being born. So it's important to pay attention to the pressure in addition to the timing. Sign number 3 that it might be time to go is bodily fluids. What bodily fluids are you seeing? Over the course of your labor, you will most likely see more bloody show, more mucus plug. If you are doing what you're supposed to be doing consistently, which is continuing to empty your bladder, when you wipe, you will probably see more bodily fluids. And these are good signs. These are signs that things are progressing along. It's not something to be concerned about because you see some blood on the toilet paper. It is concerning if you see a lot of blood, like a period flow, and that, of course, would elicit you to go to the hospital immediately. But if you're just seeing streaks of blood and it's starting to get more bright red over the course of the labor, great. If you see that your water has broken, that's also a sign that, if I've been laboring for a period of time and my contractions are getting closer together and I'm feeling a lot more pressure and now my water has broken, that might be a good time to head to the hospital, because your baby is going to be born most likely pretty soon after that. What I don't want you to confuse when it comes to your water breaking is that you need to rush to the hospital right away because your water breaks first or in the beginning of labor. If your water breaks first at the beginning of labor and you're not contracting, or it breaks in the beginning and your contractions are still pretty spaced out and you don't see any concerns in terms of the fluid, the odor, the amount, the color. I have a whole video on this on my channel that you can look up when it comes to what to know when your water breaks. But if you're not seeing any concerning signs about that, then it's not necessarily time to go yet. There are things that you can look into when it comes to that. But what I've seen a lot of my clients do and be a good sign and a cue for us to go to the hospital is that we're feeling lots of pressure, contractions are pretty close together, it's getting pretty intense, and then the water breaks. That is a good sign that it's time for us to go. And a lot of those moms are the ones who end up at the hospital and they have their babies within an hour of being there. When I felt my water break this third time around, I knew that it was time to have a baby. I was birthing at home, so thankfully I didn't have to go anywhere. But I said to my midwife and my husband, I was like, I feel a lot of pressure and I think my water is going to break on this next contraction. And lo and behold, it broke. And then right after that, I felt the urge, I felt the fetal ejection reflex to start pushing. Got on my hands and knees, and my baby was born like 10 minutes later. So the water breaking at the appropriate time in labor could be a sign that it's time for us to go. Also, another bodily fluid that you could experience that could be a sign that it's time to go is lots of nausea and vomiting. Vomiting, hot and cold flashes, diarrhea even, those are signs of transition. So if you're feeling those, in addition to the other factors that we just talked about, and you are just really struggling to hold things in or hold things down, and you are, at that point where it's getting really intense, that is a sign of transition. And it might be a good time for you to go, especially if you are a little bit further away from the hospital. If you're pretty close and you don't have to like speed out of the door, but it might be a good time to start that transition to the hospital. Sign number 4 that you want to consider that it might be time to go is the time of day or the commute. Obviously, when we are talking about a 411 pattern or 311 pattern, those are more so for women who are about 15 to 25 minutes away from their hospital. That is a good, easy ride, if you will, to get to the hospital. Now, the ride to the hospital is not fun. So make sure you have a car that is comfortable, or pillows in the car, or blankets in the car, towels in the car, just to give yourself a little padding of discomfort that can come from the bumps in the road. But if you have a little bit more of a lengthy commute, that could be 30 minutes plus, then we want to just pay attention to that. Or if it's like 5 p.m. rush hour time and you're going to be sitting in traffic and you're feeling a lot of these signs and symptoms, like pressure is really great. And maybe the pressure is really great, but we've been laboring at a 411 for a while and you feel like things are progressing. You're seeing a lot more bloody show. You're seeing a lot more mucus plug. You're starting to feel really nauseous and vomiting consistently. Then maybe leaving around that 411 after you've established that, not that the first hour, but like you've established we're in this 411 pattern. Maybe it's a good time to start transitioning if you have a 45-minute plus commute to the hospital. The one thing you don't have to do, though, is go straight into the hospital. If you're worried and it's causing you anxiety and stress because of the time of day and you feel like things are picking up pretty quickly, there's absolutely nothing wrong with transitioning to the hospital sooner. What I will say, though, is that going into the hospital can completely shift that physiology and that hormone and that oxytocin production right away, because you're starting to be bothered and pricked and poked and checked and all these things, and it's loud and cold and noisy. That can completely shift or slow down the process. So what I will say when it comes to that is keep in consideration that you can labor in the parking lot. You can labor at Target. You can go walk around and do some things before you get into the hospital. But maybe being closer to the hospital gives you some peace of mind. But you don't have to go in. You can still labor outside and walk in when you feel all these signs that are like, okay, yeah, it's go time. So keep that into consideration. But a lot of times, babies are born in the middle of the night because that's when things feel the calmest for us. And that's why a lot of babies are born in the middle of the night or at night or wee hours in the morning, because things are slow and they're calm. So if you do end up having a midday baby, just keep those things in mind. But please don't rush, because it can completely slow this whole process down. And cue number 5 that it might be time to go is emergencies, medical emergencies, because things can happen. Things are not always perfect and things do not always go as planned. And so it's important for you to know what signs or cues or signals may require us to give our babies a little bit more attention quickly. If you start to notice that you're laboring and you're not feeling your baby move consistently, your baby will still move throughout labor. You will still feel them move throughout labor. They're not going to be like doing somersaults and kicks and turns because they don't have that much room to do that. But you still should feel a consistent amount of movement from your baby throughout labor. If not, and you do all the things, drink some cold water, some sugar, move around, poke, and baby is not really responding to that, that's probably a good sign that it's time to go to the hospital and make sure that everything is okay. If your water breaks and you start to see some discoloration in your waters, that could mean heavy, thick brown meconium. That could mean green, which could be a sign of an infection. That could mean that you're having lots of blood in terms of not just bloody show, but like you're filling up a pad. Those are real causes for concern. And those are medical emergencies. And so you should absolutely pay attention to those and go be seen sooner rather than later. Also, if your intuition and your gut is telling you something isn't right about this, then you should listen to that. But make sure that when you're thinking about there's something off here, that it's coming from intuition and not fear. Fear can drive a lot of really poor decision making in labor. And that's because a lot of us are fearful because we're not fully educated. So make sure that you get educated so that when you are in the swing of labor, these decisions that feel really big for you are based out of intuition and knowledge and not fear. Because fear will have you at the hospital and you are 2 centimeters. And now you're there and you don't want to drive home. And now you got to try to figure out how to get the oxytocin flowing back again in the midst of a space that is not comfortable, quiet, calm, or relaxing. So keep those things in mind, but always listen to your intuition, listen to your gut and your body. And if there's something wrong, all these other signs and cues that we just talked about are no longer valid. That is the most important thing to be concerned about. Okay, y'all. So those are the 5 signs that I want you to pay attention to know that it might be time to go. I promise you that if you educate yourself, you practice these things, and you are confident in yourself and in your baby, that this will be a amazingly beautiful and enjoyable experience for you. So keep those 5 tips in mind. If you want more information on how to actually navigate like the in-betweens of all of these things, check down below for my Work Your Birth program, and I will help you along the way. That is it from me. Let me know down in the comments below which one of these things might be the most challenging for you to trust yourself on, or what sorts of things from this video that you want me to dive in deeper on. Let me know in the comments below, and I will check those out, and we will be talking through the comments to make sure that you are prepared. All right, y'all, that is it from me. I will see you on the next video.